Well, good afternoon. I'm Gordon McCann, and this is Art Galbraith. We're from Springfield, Missouri, in southwest Missouri, Greene County. Now we got to stop. We've been giving these concerts all over the United States. We've given them to people that aren't quite sure whether the Ozarks are in Utah or southeast Alabama or where. So we've got to change our format here because we're home and you know what we're talking about. And of course, those people have given us a lot of latitude as to what we can say. Yeah, Granny and Jed Clampett live just down the street. We can tell them things like that. They don't know the difference. So today, if you see us kind of look at each other and stop and think a minute, we'll think, well, we better not stretch the blanket here, because we're going to get in trouble. So we've stood long enough, Arthur. You sit down, we're going to sit down. So we'll go ahead and get set up here. Need to be.
It gives us a great deal of pleasure to be a part of this program and be part of the Wilson Creek Memorial and the library and all that goes with it. We're especially interested in the library down there and all its possibilities, and it's my understanding it's one of the best Civil War libraries in the country, and as I say, we're very pleased to be part of it, and we're going to hang loose now. You pat your feet all you want to because we're going to pat ours. That's why this rug's underneath our feet. So we hope you enjoy it.
I might explain here before we get started now. Even though a lot of you are from here, you have no idea that this music still exists. Now, it's not a dead language. We haven't gone to a Mel Bay songbook and learned 2 or 3 tunes to play here. All the tunes we play in the first half, Arth's family has played them for generations, and it's all over the Ozarks you'll hear this music. And we're going to try and give you more or less a survey along with the Civil War. We're going to change our normal program in that we're going to have more local references to this audience and more Civil War references than we normally would have. But we're going to start with some of the earliest we're going to give you an example of each of the different types of music that are still played in this traditional music in the Ozarks. And we're going to start off with a reel that if you were in the British Isles or in Ireland right now, they call it Lord MacDonald's reel. In this part of the country, we call it leather breeches.
This is an old tune that's from Scotland, and it's emigrated to this country. Changed a little bit because all immigration changes things. And it's called Bill in the Low Ground. Has a minor part to it. It's rather a lonesome sound, but we like to play it. It's an old
And one thing you're going to notice about this music, like Art mentioned, is everything we play, somewhere or another, you can tap your foot to it. Because this is dance music. The only reason this music ever existed was for people to dance to. And it was never meant for us to be up here on a stage and all of you sitting out there doing nothing while we sit up here and work. There should be 4 or 5 sets of square dancers behind us if we're playing a tune like that, Leather Breeches, and there'll be other hornpipes we'll play and reels. They're indistinguishable now. At one time they had a different tempo for the dance they were played for. But all of this is square dance music now, so you'll see that hard driving beat. And any of you from out around here that have done old-time Ozarks square dancing know exactly what I mean about this. So we're going to play another type of tune that are the jigs. Now, the Ozark jig dancing is not like the Irish jig dancing. And this type of music at one time was played. They still play it a lot, but they don't dance to this much anymore. So this is a jig time. The first one we're going to play is called Over the Water to Charlie's. And this is in reference to either Bonnie Prince Charles or Charles II. Well, I don't know. I'm not a historian about that. And he was kicked out of England and went to France. And his followers, during the Jacobite Revolution in the 1845, around in there, 1745, I should say. And their toast was over the water to Charlie's. In other words, over the English Channel, we're toasting our king who's been kicked out. That's the first one we'll play. Then we'll go into another one that you all recognize as the Irish Washerwoman. But we'll start off with Over the Water to Charlie's.
This is still another type of dance that came from the British Isles. It's called a cotillion, and there's a long line dance where a lot of people could dance. Usually somebody started it and did something like an elbow hook and a turn around or a rights and left or something, and then the next couple followed, and it went on down the line, sort of like a Virginia reel. But this is definitely has been a bagpipe piece, and part of it I try to make it sound like a bagpipe.
dancers and buffalo gal names. Now we're kind of taking you, like I say, in a kind of a chronological order. Can you all hear all right? This sound seems real good, and I guess you can all hear okay. And in fact, we're really, this has got to be the most atmosphere of any place we've played in. This is just beautiful, the restoration they've done. Any of us that used to go with the Landers years ago and never saw it with the lights on anyway. And all we remember the stale popcorn smell was about the only thing. But it's just beautiful what they've done here, and this is really a treasure for this town. So anyway, yeah.
I used to go to the Landers a long time ago, see a lot of things. I didn't go here very often. I went to some other theaters because, after all, it cost 35 cents to get in here.
Yeah. Now we're going to come up into we've been kind of hanging back in the 18th century, and maybe these cotillions came about the early part of the 19th century. That cotillion, I could just see some aristocrat's home somewhere in the South or Maryland or somewhere with these dances. Then as your population centers began to develop more and move a little more, you had the minstrel shows develop to follow these shows. And you had another type of music, a little faster step, a little different tempo to dance to, that was developed. And we're going to play a couple of minstrel tunes, and both of them you recognize. I found out I fudged here. I'll have to confess it. We've been doing Golden Slippers, and I thought, well, Golden Slippers is an old minstrel tune. We're going to do also Buffalo Gals. Buffalo Gals was written in 1836, and yet you'll see it's just the same tune exactly that we all know now. But I found out Golden Slippers wasn't done until 1880, so forgive us here. We should have checked first. But anyway, we'll start off with Golden Slippers. I'll tell the story of the Schottish, and then when we're talking here, we're planning your program is what we're doing, so just give us a second here. Another dance that was very common, actually probably in the late 18th century, 1700s, but came up into this century, was the Schottish. Now, the Schottish used to be danced a lot in the Ozarks, and still, when we go and play square dances down in the hills like Ozark and Douglas County and Christian County, around in there, where they still do the old-time square dancing that we're familiar with. I'm sure there's other areas that still do, too. Between sets, when they're all resting and getting a drink of water so they can start again, a couple will get out occasionally and do a Schottish, because all the fiddlers still play Schottishes, but you don't see it this much in the Ozarks, except occasionally like that. Now, when we've been in Nebraska, over in Kansas, you have a lot of Middle and Eastern European people, and the fiddle's still their instrument too, and they dance a lot of Schottishes, and I think it's one of the prettiest dances. A lot of people I know have never seen it, but a lot have, and when it's done right, it's a very pretty dance. But the Schottish, the story behind it is kind of interesting. Of course, it was originated in Scotland. and it kind of lost favor, never did much there, and the fad of it moved over into Europe, and the Germans really took it on. They liked it. So Schottish is a German for Scottish. Then it came back again to the British Isles and on over to this country, so that's why it's called the Schottish. Now, we're going to play one here, but we could have picked a Schottish that was known all around, but we thought one with local interest would be interesting to you.
This was evidently composed, or his name goes with it, a doctor down at Crane, Missouri, which is just a little, you know where it is, about 30 miles from here. And he was a doctor and also a fiddler. But this is called Doc Jessup's Schottish, whether I don't know why, whether he composed it or just played it.
Now, this next one, we got kind of a production with this. This is one of the ones that gave us the idea for this program to be tied in with Wilson Creek and everything. You notice I say Wilson Creek. They say correct is Wilson's Creek, but I've always said Wilson Creek, and I'm going to continue to say it. That get me in trouble with the parks people now. But anyway, one of the tunes that I've come across over the years was in a story in a book called Sparks from the Campfires, published in 1897. And reading through this story, it's about a woman that comes into Springfield on the eve of the battle, and she's from East Tennessee, and her husband's been killed there, and she and her young son came to St. Louis to find her sister, whom she can't find. So for some reason, she comes on down to Springfield to see if she can find procurement somewhere, some kind of way to support her family. And so she comes to, I'm going to read you this the way, any of you familiar with these 19th century stories know they'll bring tears to a glass eye. Some of them are said. But anyway, she comes to Lyon the night before the battle, and she likes to know if she could get her boy on as the drummer boy. I assume the boy was probably 10 or 12 years old. And it tells that Lyon says, well, Sergeant, bring a drum and order our fifer to come forward. You didn't know this was going to be an English class, did you? You're going to hear that. And the fifer comes up, and he is introduced. Let's go over here. He says, yes, the little boy says, I drum for Captain Hill in Tennessee. And our fifer immediately commenced straightening himself upward until all the angles of his person had disappeared, when he placed his fife to his mouth and played the Flowers of Edinburgh. Another thing I've learned on these tours is I don't say flowers anymore. I have to say flowers now. You know, I've been corrected on that. One of the most difficult things to follow with the drum that could have been selected, and nobly did the little fellow following him, so and so and so and so. And Lyon says, Madam, may I take your boy? What is his name? Edward Lee, she replied. Then placing her hand upon the captain's arm, she continued. Now, I'm reading this. Captain, if he is not killed. Here her maternal feelings overcame her utterances, and she bent down to her boy and kissed him on the forehead. I thought, that's nice that she's going to send him into combat to make some change until she can find work. But anyway, I just had to read that because that... But anyway, the main reference, of course, is the fact that the Flowers of Edinburgh was the tune that's referred to. And Art's family, you can tell them about that.
Well, this is, I know, the oldest tune I know, and I know it's been in 4 generations of my family. I may not play it like as it was originally played, but this is a version that we have done a long time.
This corridor. Oh, that's going to be a girl left behind me all over here. And then the story goes on to say that as they marched out the next day, the 1st Iowa marched away playing The Girl I Left Behind Me. Now, The Girl I Left Behind Me, you're all familiar with, and it's really an old British marching song, and it dates from an Irish tune they figure 300 years ago or so. Now, Art's family plays this tune, and you'll hear a lot of fiddlers play it. But it'll be a little different version his family has developed than what you're used to. Marching through Georgia. Tell you about your uncle marching through Georgia.
There's unfortunately, about a civil war. It's the worst kind of war that can happen because you never know what your neighbor loyalty is. You don't know whether to put yourself up as an ally to him or an enemy or what. And it took a long time for our Civil War and any Civil War for the scars to heal. But anyway, after the war, the last year of the war, more or less tunes developed that were strictly Confederate or strictly Union. And marching through Georgia was, of course, the horrible thing for the South when Sherman marched through Georgia. Got to be a pretty sore spot with the Confederates. And I had an uncle where I learned this tune. He was enough of a Confederate that he never would play Marching Through Georgia, and if anybody else played it in the room, he'd get up and walk out. So it's the Union tune. play a little Dixie.
Huh?
I can play a little Dixie.
Yeah. Well, if we played Marching Through Georgia, we darn well better play Dixie because we're going to be in trouble here. They lost anyway. It'll be famous. Another dance that had come over from Europe just before the Civil War and was gaining popularity, and then during the Civil War, and then right on down to now, was the waltz. And Art's family plays a real pretty waltz, Irish as it can be sounding. Seamus O'Brien's the name of it. And Art plays that, and we went to some of these festivals. We went to one to Wolf Trap one time, and they had Irish fiddlers from Ireland there, and we thought, well, we'll play Seamus O'Brien for them, and they can see how pretty we play it, and we'll see what kind of compliments we get. Well, we played it, and they said, what's that? And we said, Seamus O'Brien. We had to make them a tape so they could take it back to Ireland. Well, I got to checking, and I found out it was written by a guy named William Shakespeare Hayes in 1867 that lived in Cleveland, Ohio. So it was a song, in fact. And so you never know about these tunes. We'll talk more about the names of these tunes and everything, but we're going to play. This is a pretty waltz. I think you'll like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we're curious. Are you enjoying this? Is this what you expected? I mean, we really feel a lot of people don't know what we're talking to. They think of Orange Blossom Special and things like that because that music is just dominated nowadays. And this old-time fiddle music, the thing that's really a distinctive thing about it is the variety of music that's played. It just never gets boring because you can go from all these different styles of music. And believe me, these fiddlers are like almost a subculture. There's hundreds of them out there. But right now, we're going to stop and have an intermission, and you're going to get, it's springtime, and it's time to thin the blood, and they've got sassafras tea out there and cookies. And when we come back, we're going to leave the house lights up because you're in our kitchen. That's what we're going to look at this as. This is like we go to music parties. This isn't work at all. This is what we do for fun all the time. And we'll take the second half, we're going to take off where we were. I better take it off here, too. I had this all worked out. Forgot about it. There. Now the second half of the program. We're going to take up, better put my eyes on, too. I've come to that age where my arms aren't long enough to hold things out. You have to wear glasses. So we're going to take off with the post-Civil War years now, and the other types of music that probably carry over on with the minstrel tunes and everything, but you had a type of music we call music hall or dance hall tunes. It's the kind of music that followed the settlers west, and whenever you go to the movies and they show the old saloon with the dance hall, it's the kind of music that evolved then, more or less a forerunner of the rags and Tin Pan Alley type stuff. Now we're going to play one here called, now this one was written later than the 1870s or so, but it's indicative of this same type of music, and the reason we picked it here again is because of local reference. This is called Dixie Blossoms, and it was written by a man named Percy Winrich, who lived in Joplin, Missouri. And he also wrote Put On Your Old Gray Bonnet, On Moonlight Bay, When She Wore a Tulip, and all that. But this is the type of tempo, and this music is still played a lot in the Ozarks. With this is another type of music we call rags that evolved more or less from the late 1880s up to about 1910, 1915, somewhere before the First World War. We're going to play you one called Stone's Rag, named after a lot of these tunes. We're going to get into these names of these tunes a little more. Some of them are beyond explanation, some of the titles of these tunes. But a lot of them are named after the person that made them popular, and they probably, like Doc Jessup's Schottish, was undoubtedly a Schottish that somebody never knew what the real name was. Well, Doc Jessup played it, so it's Doc Jessup Schottish. This is called Stone's Rag, and it was named after one of the early fiddlers on the Grand Ole Opry when it first started. But it's an older tune, of course. Well, when we've been up in Nebraska and Kansas and any of these western states, they do a lot of polkas. Well, the Ozarks just never had the polka. They've come in the recent years, beer barrel polka, and there's a bunch of them that the fiddlers play now, but years ago you never had the polka in this part of the country. And we're going to play what was called a quick step, which was the closest thing we had to the tempo of a polka, called Weidman's Quick Step. Now, another music now all these tunes are still played in the Ozarks. We're not just trying to give you a survey of American music. We're giving you a survey of traditional Ozarks fiddling music. That's what I want to emphasize here. And none of this, like I said, all of these are still played in one form or another by one title or another. We could find a music party somewhere within driving distance of Springfield any night of the week, somewhere in the Ozarks. And in varying degrees of skill, you'd hear these tunes. Now, there's another type of music that came along, and they call it blues. Now, it's not the black blues at all. This is a country-type blues, what I call honky-tonk music. They don't ever use that word. They call them blues. But it's the kind you think of playing in some beer joint along the road where they get up and they dance, and I guess we used to dance like this in high school where they look like they're pumping water or something, you know, that old two-step they used to do. And this is called the Rabbit Foot Blues.
I think if it is composed now, it'd be called the Graham Rudman Blues. Now we're going to get up into the music all of you are a little more familiar with, which had come in about the First World War and around in there, 10-Pound Alley type of music. And we're going to play a medley of two tunes. One's called Me Too, has a snappy little melody to it, and the other one is Darktown Strutter's Ball.
Now, we've covered some of them. We're going to finish up what would have been the first half of the program. Another type of music that is really predominant west of here is what they call Texas style. Now, there's Bob Wills. Of course, you got to remember, if you go to Texas, there's God, country, and Bob Wills, and I'm never sure about the order. So if you ever go down there, don't ever admit you don't know who he is. But there's a Texas style of fiddling that fitted their type of dancing originally, but you'll notice it's a different tempo. Now, we are really kind of Ozarks style, Texas style. If you heard real Texas, there's no Texas here, Hope, so they don't know what different. But this is a different type of tempo. It's called Sally Johnson. Now, normally, this is where we would have our intermission now, so we're going to go on now. And I got something just because we're doing it here in Springfield I thought you all might be interested in. I'm putting myself in jeopardy, though, by doing this, so you'll have to bear with me. Let me get this thing put up a second here. Tell a joke or something, Martha, while I'm...
I don't know him.
Yeah.
Gordon's awfully, he can't express himself very well. And,
I never... This is an 1888 Luscombe banjo, and it came to Springfield as a 16th birthday present to a young lady named Carrie Dell Headley that lived over on the corner of Jefferson and Chestnut at that time. And she played it all her life and married here and had a son named Edward Sheltman, who was what was her married name. Ed's back here somewhere. Are you back there, Ed? There he is. Ed and I were talking, and I got this from Ed, and thought you might find it interesting. You won't be able to see this. It wasn't blowing up. But this is on her 16th birthday. You got to get it right side. Yeah, better that you all get on your heads and look at it then. See. But this is a picture taken. We wish somebody to identify her boyfriend there. He was playing a tater-bug mandolin. But anyway, we'll put this out in the lobby later on. But I thought it was interesting that this has been in this town and in just mint condition. Now, all my musician friends that are sitting out there are going to look up here and frown at me something terrible, because this is originally a 5-string. It's got a 12-inch head. Most of them have 10-inch. And I'm too old to learn to play 5-string banjo. So I took the peg and the key off here and made a tenor banjo out of it. Now, these things, you'll see why, in bluegrass, the dominant instrument's a banjo. There's no way to play a banjo quietly. See there, that thing's loud. Well, he wouldn't even be in the room with me if I tried to play it this way. Because you don't ever upstage fiddlers. That's the first thing you learn when you play with it. They look at the accompanist, I'm serious, they look at me as a human metronome. I'm here to help him keep time, and that's the only thing. I'm not kidding, I'm being truthful about that. So what you do is you take, now these are clean, I took a pair of socks here, gym socks, and you just put it in here. Now we're going to play one tune strictly for demonstration. this sound of this banjo. So I don't hold myself. That's where I like the orchestra pit, because there's no way I can. I'm going to play an old, here again, another one of those Dixie Blossom type tunes. This is one called Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which is not the one you're thinking of at all, if I remember the chord progression. But don't applaud that.
That's all right.
But I thought you'd find it interesting that this had, most of you know Ed and everything, and I thought that, and his mother played this until her last years, and she played it 5-string, which I couldn't do. But it's a pretty old thing with a lot of mother of pearl in it and everything, and those photographs make it interesting too. So we'll get back to where I think I know where I am here on the guitar. Carrie Dell, forgive me. Okay. Well, we're kind of open now. We're going to show you 2 or 3 more things about this music, and then if you want requests or anything, that's why I left the house lights up. We want this to, as far as we're concerned, you're in our kitchen. We couldn't get you all in there, but that's what we're going to pretend it is, and we're just having a music party is all we're doing. So any requests, we'll take them here in a minute. Yeah, that would help, wouldn't it? Get that, the banjo shook me up. Okay, where are we here? Let's play, we talked about Bob Wills a while ago. This is a tune that was written in that era of ragtime tunes, 1890s, around in there, up 1910. And then Bob Wills took it and made it popular, so everybody thinks it's exclusively his tune, but it's much older. It's called the Beaumont Rag. Wait a minute. Look. All my flashy cribs I had here, I was supposed to tear this off when we played Sally Johnson a while ago. I wonder why we were starting on Beaumont Rag. I just had that on there as a reminder. We're starting way up here. So we'll go back up now where we were going to go. What I wanted to tell you about this music, the thing that once you get around it, and the more I got around it, the more interested I got into it, and the more fascinated I became by the repertoire of these people, and the number of tunes some of these guys know, and the variety of these tunes. And there's a system of these tunes, or a trend of these tunes, what they call spin-offs. In other words, somewhere way back was an old hornpipe or a reel or something, and umpteen numbers of tunes have spun off from the thing. So a good example of this, though, we're going to play you 3 here. The first one was an old minstrel tune that was written in when I say written, what we mean there is that's the first time it's seen in print. It may be way older than that. This 1834 is this tune. It's called Old Zip Coon. Now, he was a magazine, an adventure character, like Davy Crockett or something in some of the early 19th century literature. But this tune was called Old Zip Coon here. We'll play it. It's in G. That's the first one. It's really a mystery, isn't it? I'm sure a lot of you quick minds have already deduced this whole thing. But anyway, then there was another one came along about 1840 called Natchez Under the Hill. Now, Natchez, Mississippi had a bawdy district that was down along the river. It was called Natchez Under the Hill. So this tune is another one came along. Okay. Then, in 1861, the one came along that you all know now today. It's still popular today. Of course, you all know that's Turkey in the Straw. I don't see how he keeps them straight if they're so close together. But that's the thing about so many of these tunes are these spin-offs. Now, we don't know whether all three of those came from this original tune or maybe Turkey in the Straw came from one of those other two. But these songs just evolve over the years. Yet the original tunes pretty well stay along. And next thing you know, you've got hundreds and hundreds of tunes. Now, I wonder, is Gabe McCraw here? Did he happen to come? I bet he didn't. Anyway, the McCraw family lives out here. We're going to do a public service. You go ahead and tell them here.
Right out east here on Cherry Street in 125 is the crossing, a historic crossing on James River called McCraw's Ford. The bridge over it now, when I was a small boy, it was you just drove out across the water. Later on, there was a low water bridge there. Now there's a big bridge there. But the McCraw family came here in 1835, and they're related to me. My great-grandmother was McCraw. And it was a sort of a very interesting place, and a lot of things happened there. A lot of near tragedies happened there. And later on in the last few years, there's been some rock concerts there. which is about as bad as ever happened to it, I think. But anyway, a doctor who was an old-time practitioner, Dr. William F. Brown, some of you here may be old enough to know who he was, but he was stationed had his office at Stratford. And of course at that time he'd go, had a driver, he's between patients he slept in his buggy. But they crossed McCraw Ford one time, and it's a tricky crossing, and the buggy lurched and woke up the doctor. He said to his driver, said, "Help me remember in the morning." He said, "I just dreamed a fiddle tune." He was also a fiddler. "I just dreamed a fiddle tune. I'm going to play it in the morning." So this is the tune he played. It's called McCraw's Ford.
Hey, the reason I said set the record straight, how many of you from here have always called that McGraw's Ford? I grew up, it was McGraw's. Even in the paper 2 weeks ago, there was 2 boys were accosted at McGraw's Ford. So we're just trying to make it straight. Now, you remember, it's McCraw's Ford. Nice turkey in the straw. Nope. You want to come back to it?
No.
We'll do Westphalia and then we'll open it up.
All right.
Okay. Now, I was talking about these fiddles. We're going to play one more here that we want to play just to kind of give you an example of something that happens with this fiddle. And then we're going to throw it open and for requests, of which most we won't know probably, but we'll talk like we do.
Yeah, 2 coming already.
Okay. These names of these fiddle tunes are just, some of them are really, the people would hear these tunes and not hear them quite right. Well, when they got back, same way with the tunes, they'd hear half a tune before tape recorders. Tape recorders have changed everything. But before then, they get back and they remember half the tune, they get it mixed up, and the next thing you go, you got a new fiddle tune. It sounds like a tune, but you're not quite sure. There's lots of those. But the names are another thing. There's an old Scottish reel called Angus Campbell. And in Ozark County, they call it Agnes Camel. But that's not the best. The best one we heard was a fiddler down in Arkansas that called it Angus Cattle. But we had, we're going to get better here. They're going to get better. There's one old boy that was, a smooth fiddler down in Arkansas, down in Fayetteville. And he's gone now. But he was a smooth fiddler, but he never heard things quite right. He had, La Golondrina was Golden Dreamer. Well, that's fine. That's a pretty name anyway. And there's a tune called Durham's Bull, and he called it Bull Durham and stuff. But his best one, there's a pretty waltz we're going to play for you now, a German waltz called Westphalia Waltz. But whenever this guy played it, he said, "I'm now going to play the West Sedalia Waltz." We'll open it up there. We'll open it up. Thank you.
I got two right now.
Well, go ahead and tell them.
Somebody asked me to play 8th of January out there a while ago. I'll play that for you now. That's about as native as can be here.
Let somebody ask one, then let's do it. Let's just let somebody ask one from the audience. And then we'll get
This is from the audience.
Okay.
Marmaduke's Hornpipe.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Marmaduke's Hornpipe, an old
That's Civil War, yeah.
name for
General Marmaduke.
General Marmaduke.
Anybody have a request? Red Wing.
Red Wing.
Okay. That's still tell them the old player piano.
Huh?
Tell them about the player piano. That's old.
Old player piano tune, Red Wing. Everybody seems to remember that. I played down Silver Dollar City a couple of seasons several years ago, and there's a moving audience there all the time. You never see anybody over 5 minutes. And I played Red Wing 150 times. I like it, but I was pretty sick of it then.
Wait, let's see if somebody else wants to then play Arkansas Trail. Would I ask? What? Sally Gooden.
All right.
last few tunes, you can just, there's your square dance beat. You can just tell that should be some square dancers up here dancing. You don't play Shenandoah, do you?
No, I don't play that.
Lost Indian? You have to be cross-tuned, though, don't you?
I'll play a tune called Lonesome Indian to it. It's almost the same thing.
What's it in? What's it in? D?
Yeah, D.
D. Is that the B minor? Yeah, okay. We'll play one you're all familiar with. This is the Arkansas Traveler. Okay, all right. Soldiers go. Whiskey, somebody said whiskey for breakfast.
Whiskey for breakfast. I'll play that. Now I'll play.
You shouldn't do that, though.
Flop-eared mule.
It's a bad habit to get into. That's a Canadian tune. A lot of Canadian tunes in the Ozarks are all through the United States, and then they play a lot of our tunes. A lot of French Canadian tunes. Soldiers.
Flop-eared mule. G.
G. Yeah, one more here. Let me tell one story.
What?
Missouri Waltz.
All right.
We got to play Missouri Waltz. So.
Now, there's a part to this that you don't often hear, but I learned it from another fiddler. It's really, I think, belongs in the tune part of the way, but it doesn't even sound like Missouri Waltz, but it leads back into it. I think you'll like it. It's a minor key too.
Two more, play that, and then Waltz will say for me. What do I say, Blackberry Blossom? Mm-hmm. We'll play just a couple of more here. It's getting time to let you all go.
What?
No, we don't play it. I'm sorry. A lot of those we don't. What was it? Lily Maureen.
Nope, Lily Marlene.
We better pick our own. We just couldn't hear you. That we know all those tunes, but we couldn't distinguish what it was. Well, now we know Bill Cheatham, but you want to play Bill Cheatham?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We know. This is another one we know.
I think we better bring this to a focus, but what we usually end our programs with is a waltz that, in the 30s and 40s was when you took your girlfriend to the dance. You danced with everybody maybe, but the thing you'd like to do last was dance with your own girl and then go home. It's called The Waltz You Saved for Me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.